You're listening to the VeloNews Tour de France podcast, supported by Jaguar.
Hello, my name is Richard Moore, and this is the first VeloNews cycling podcast supported by Jaguar. I'm with Caley Fretz of VeloNews.
Hello.
And Andy Hood, also VeloNews.
So that's how you say hood in Scottish. Hood.
Hood, 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 Hood.
I've always wondered.
It's like that Mike Myers film. Hood, Andy Hood. Would you prefer a more Americanized pronunciation?
Oh, that actually sounds quite exotic. I'll stick with that. That sounds good.
Exotic, I like it. So listen, fellas, we are a few days into the 2015 Tour de France. We're in Amiens, finishes stage 5. We're going to record this podcast over a few days to give a sense of the great journey of the Tour de France, but let's reflect on the first few days, particularly from an American point of view, you guys being Americans and all, and I'll try my best to speak with an American accent at selected moments.
Can we hear an American accent? Can we hear an American accent from Richard Moore?
I think 2 American accents in one podcast are more than enough, so I'll stick with what I know best. I'm not very good at accents. Now, there are only 3 Americans in the Tour de France this year. When is the last time only 3 Americans started the Tour?
It was back in 1996, 20 years. It was actually Armstrong and Andrew.
I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that 1996 is 20 years ago.
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago.
1996 must have been about your 20th tour, was it, Andy?
That was my first tour, actually. Yeah. So I've been around for a while. And since then, we've had a good, steady presence, U.S. presence in the peloton since since the late 90s. But I think last year, I think we had a good 8 or 9 Americans. This year, it was just a coincidence of, I think, team selection, a few injuries, a few guys retiring. We have a pretty good flow of younger talent coming up. It's not like there's a crisis in American cycling right now. I think it's just this year was almost coincidental. There's only 3 starters.
Who were the 3 in 96? I know one of them.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it was 2 in 96.
Oh, 2 in 96.
Yeah, it was Andreu and Armstrong.
2 great figures of American cycling. Caley, you certainly, I don't know what age you'd have been in 1996, probably 8 years old.
I would have been 8 years old. Yeah.
I think it's similar to the UK last year when the race started in Great Britain. There were the fewest British starters in a long time, and it wasn't really indicative of any kind of crisis. It was almost just circumstances. So we're a few days in, and a lot of people are starting to talk about Tejay van Garderen, who's made a flawless start to the race. He seems to be a rider who belongs to that sort of second string of GC contenders behind the big 4. But he hasn't put a foot wrong so far, has he? And he is looking very good. What have you made so far, Caley, of Tejay van Garderen?
Well, he's ridden consistently the entire first week, and he said before the race that this is after the Dauphiné, before the Tour de France. He said he didn't mind not being included in that top 4. They've all had much better results than he's had, but he also made it clear that he wants to be included in that group after this race. So I think he's well on his way to that. He's a very, very strong team for the team time trial coming up, and he's been just so consistent the entire week. I think that the real trouble for him might come in the last week when some of the climbers might be able to get rid of him, but he's looking so good so far.
There was an interesting moment on stage 2 in the crosswind stage where Van Garderen made the split. Rowan Dennis had the yellow jersey for BMC, and they didn't seem to hesitate at all in not defending that jersey. So the impression that you have is that it's really all for Tejay at BMC.
Yeah, in fact, that was the message that was quite clear even after the Rowan's victory in the time trial. I think this is the best Tejay we've ever seen coming into this race. Last year, if you remember, he fractured his hip in Romandie in May. So he said last year he was always on the back foot. He was chasing form the whole season, and he still managed to finish 5th. Tejay doesn't get a lot of doesn't engender a lot of enthusiasm even among the American fans. And I think this year, he'll gain a lot of fans and respect from within the cycling community, both in the fan side and within the peloton, because I think, barring disaster, he could actually end up very close to the podium, if not on it.
Yeah, he's one of we saw him at the Dauphiné. He's a real sort of diesel, isn't he? He's not got that acceleration in the mountains that the big 4 kind of all have. But he would claw his way back to Froome. Perhaps he's not flash, is he? He's not somebody who, as you say, engenders a lot of excitement necessarily, but he's very effective. And how far can he go? Is he America's second ever Tour de France winner?
Well, yeah, let's see. How many do we have to erase? I think America holds the record for results erased because we have so many dark stories in our past.
Maybe your future too.
Maybe our future as well. We shall see. Yeah, very well. I mean, he and Talansky were at kind of a sweet moment right now in the GC picture. Talansky is right there as well. Maybe a step behind Tejay right now in terms of his development as a Grand Tour rider. But Talansky also has some potential. I think this tour is big for Talansky as well, just to get through this tour. Last year, obviously, he didn't finish. He had the top 10 in his debut 2 years ago. For him to get through, improve in the top 10 would be a huge step for him as well.
And the other Americans, we've got Talansky. I've forgotten who the third one is.
Tyler Farrar.
Oh, of course, how could I forget? He's got a little ponytail, I noticed. Controversial.
Yeah, a little Norse-looking, Viking. I don't know what exactly.
Peter Sagan is one as well. This is a worrying trend.
It's the new trend in the hipster. The beard is so yesterday. It's all about the ponytail and the man bob, or whatever they call it.
Man bob. I assume Caley would have the correct terminology because he's sitting here with his Rafa jeans are halfway up his legs. He's got his stripy socks. He's got a musette slung over his shoulder in an affected casual fashion. He's looking every inch. He's looking every inch of the hipster. Caley, tell us about the other Americans. Talansky in particular.
Well, yeah, Talansky, he was very, very excited after his ride in stage 4. I spoke to him after the stage yesterday. Had a couple of good teammates with him, finished with the front group, and is now sitting a little under 3 minutes behind. This is after stage 5, assuming nothing happens in the next hour. Not a perfect start for him this tour, definitely not a perfect start, but close to as good as he could hope. He got stuck behind a crash in that very, very nasty second stage, and then was therefore behind the split and lost most of his time there, and then lost a bit more following another split coming into the Mur de Huy. So he's in 20th or so, and I think a good race for him is a solid 15 places higher than that, and I think he's still confident that he can get up there. He just keeps telling me that he's waiting for the third week. That's really what he's focused on. He just wants to maintain his position up until that point, and then he'll look to rise in that last week. Even the second week he's not really focused on. He wants to wait for the Alps.
How's the Pitbull's temper? He's famously hot-headed on occasions. How is he?
So I've been at the bus most afternoons, most finish lines, and I've seen him 3 different times now come up and apologize to a teammate for a previous outburst. I was not obviously there to witness any of those previous outbursts, but I think leadership for him is going to be a learning process, and he definitely has to figure out how to keep these guys motivated while maybe occasionally yelling at them.
How does he get on with Dan Martin? There are rumours, he's they're sort of co-leaders, aren't they? And I'm not sure what the hierarchy there is exactly. And there have been rumours in the past of a bit of tension, a bit of friction between Dan Martin and Andrew Talansky. Andy's nodding here.
Yeah, well, I think Talansky believes he's the boss, and he believes now that the team should be built around him. With Dan Martin, I think obviously they're kind of quite a contrast in personalities as well. I mean, Martin's pretty laid back. It seems like a pretty quiet guy, whereas Talansky is very emotional and intense on the moment. I think there could be. I think the GC will sort that out rather quickly. I mean, Martin's lost already so much time. He's in stage hunting mode, so maybe it won't play out in the short term in this tour. But I think in the long term, mid long term, that could be an issue for that team.
What do you think of that? The team has had its challenges this season and its new guys as Cannondale Garmin. It seems to have struggled a bit. I mean, they had a great stage win at the Giro, of course, but they've struggled, haven't they? They seem to be lacking firepower or real sort of talismanic type figures. It seems a bit lightweight at times. What do you make of the team, Andy, and its new guys?
Well, it's been an interesting transition. Actually, they said that the integration of the Canada guys was much smoother than when the Sevilla guys came in a few years. They said that did not work out at all. They were saying when these Canada guys came in, mostly the Italian guys, they all quickly tried to speak English. They're learning English. Younger guys who fit into the team. I think the real issue with Garderen actually right now is the fact that the core of the team is all retired now. That team was all based around the David Millers, the Van de Velds, the Risky, all those guys. They really carried that team from its inception up until a year or two ago. The only guys left really are Danielson, who's kind of on the wane, and Ryder, who's still pretty rock steady. So I think the team is, in a way, searching for a new identity, searching for a new leader. So I think maybe Martin and Talansky are kind of trying to get their head around that as well. We always have Ryder, and he's like, you saw him at the Tour, at the Giro, excuse me, lost 5 minutes out the gate and fought back and finished fifth and almost got 2 stage wins. So I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to be trying to do, get a stage win out of this Tour for Ryder.
Before we leave it today, we'll resume in somewhere down the road. I think we're going to try and meet up at the start tomorrow and maybe wander around the team buses and chat there. We're a few days into the race now. Can you maybe rattle through the four big ones? What are we calling them? The Quattro Galacticos. Daniel calls them Quintana, Froome, Contador, and Nibali. What have you made of each of them, Caley? And where, 5 days in, are they all going to be happy? Are you favouring sort of one or two over the others?
Oh, I'm going to steal Hoodie's answer here. Froome looks fantastic. He looks just rock solid and confident, very, very confident. I think Nibali missed his last real opportunity at serious time gain yesterday. This is stage 4. I think without taking time there, he's going to find it difficult to take time elsewhere. Contador looks a little bit on the back foot. He was straight up dropped up the Mur de Huy by Froome. Was on Froome's wheel and just popped off the back. Quintana has had a little bit of bad luck. He is maybe the only question mark. He's such a good climber that last week he could potentially take the time he needs. But Froome is looking the best to me so far.
Amazing that none of them have been caught out in any of the crashes, the inevitable crashes. We expected, I think, to lose one or even two of them, and they've avoided them, which is good for the race. But what's your assessment, Andy?
Yeah, I would agree with that. In fact, that was my answer. I
told you I was stealing it.
No, I'm going to steal it as well. It's good.
We talk a lot in the car, so we're brainstorming, swapping ideas. But yeah, I mean, to me, Froome looks absolutely in control of the race right now. Perhaps more so than I even expected. Coming in here, I thought it was going to be a race between Froome and Contador. Now, Nibali looks a little bit sharper to me now than Contador. To tell the truth, Quintana, he's hard to read. He has that mask on right now. You really don't know if he's suffering, he's not suffering. I believe he is suffering in these conditions and these pavés. But, I think that Froome is the top dog among the Fab Four right now.
And how about the Fab 2? How's your tour going so far in the VeloNews mobile?
Well, we got a parking ticket this morning, but we just successfully completed a full load of laundry in between the start and the finish with no loss of work time. So I think we're doing quite well so far.
These small victories are what make a tour. To get a laundry done before a rest day, that's like, if you're a GC guy, that's like taking time on day 2.
Yeah, exactly. We also got our French SIM cards. Another painless experience this morning. We were just so far in our hotels have actually been. Well, we did have an interesting experience at a hotel the other night in Belgium. We on Booking.com. We showed up and the hotel was one of these kind of hotels that you rent by the hour. So
covered in mirrors.
Yeah, we had
mirrors.
Mine was the Chantilly lace room, and Caley's was the disco balls. Round bed and lots of mirrors, lots of it.
All of my light switches, there's none that just turned on a light. All of them turned on some sort of flashing, spinning, twirling, mirrored.
Well, if you will, let Andy book your hotels. This guy's not been covering the tour for 25 years without picking up a few tips along the way.
That's right. You know where to stay.
Belgium and Holland are notorious for this, aren't they? We stayed in a very similar type of place a couple of years ago. You never know. You never quite know what you're going to get in these countries.
Yeah, in fact, the madame, the lady of the house, told us, well, there's only one couple left. They usually come during the day, so for the evening there won't be too many noises.
Excellent. Right, well, fellas, we'll leave it there and resume in a day or so, and you'll have part 2 of the VeloNews cycling podcast. Caley Fretz.
That's me.
We're at start stage 7 in Lavereau, and we're just wandering around the team buses. Beautiful sunny day, isn't it?
It's lovely. No rain, hardly any
Andy
wind.
Hood as well. What's your mission? Gally, you've been on your bike this morning.
No, not me. Hoodie stole my bike this morning. Yeah, no.
All right.
No bike for me. Bike yesterday.
So what's your goal this morning, Caley? Who are you going to speak to?
Well, I just threw some elbows in the Froome scrum, talking about why he is not wearing the yellow jersey today, which he says is in deference to Tony Martin and his injury yesterday. He just said it was the right thing to do. That's pretty much all I've done.
Confusion
so far.
about whether he would be entitled to wear the yellow jersey or not. I guess until Tony Martin doesn't sign in, he is the yellow jersey. And then, what would be the protocol then? That
I believe that is correct. I don't think he could have worn it today, even if he wanted to. But nonetheless,
he's come out of it smelling of roses.
Exactly,
a great PR move.
A great PR move from Mr. Froome. And he did say that the decision was made last night before they even had a chance to look at the rules. So.
There's Dan Martin riding past us. Any other gossip this morning? Anything you've seen? Anyone you've spoken to?
Well, I had some hearsay gossip on our man Talansky, who apparently is feeling better and better, and just yesterday came and told the directors that he thinks his legs have upped a level, and he's riding, a week of hard riding, and he's better than even at the start of the tour. So that's happy for us.
Caley, let's go in a completely different direction with this conversation. But speaking of Talansky, it reminds me of a conversation we were having in our car about crashes, the fetishization of crashes. Now, crashes have been talked about a lot this week, and a lot of the onboard bike footage seems to be focusing on crashes. Those are the ones that generate the most hits. Now, in the sort of highlights reel of last year's tour, every morning it plays endlessly in the village. Every few minutes there's Andrew Talansky's crash from last year, heavy crash. Yeah. And you think, is that really a highlight of last year's tour? Is it fair that there is this sort of fetishization of crashing, and that there's something a bit uncomfortable about it, is there not? What do you think?
It's definitely a bit uncomfortable. I mean, it's a human being flopping around on the pavement there. Talansky last year, that ended his tour. That was a whole year's riding down the drain. That's a sad moment, I think. But maybe it's the job of the media to highlight happy and sad, and.
Yeah, the media, but this is the official sort of tour highlights reel. This is the thing that plays at the start every morning and is sort of endorsed by the tour, if you like, because it's the tour presenting the highlights from last year. And is Tony Martin going to be there next year as a highlight of this year's race, or is the crash that we saw the other day, is that going to be packaged up as part of one of the highlights of this year's race? I don't. I think
sure
it's a bit distasteful.
I agree. It's definitely distasteful. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but
there's nothing we can do about it. We're absolutely opposed, but we can have an opinion about it.
Yeah. My opinion is that they shouldn't do it so much. But you think about sort of the job of the video editor, and he or she's looking for 2 or 3 second clips that can tell a story. And honestly, most things in cycling take a little bit longer than that. They require a little bit more narrative, and a crash is a crash, and you can see that instantly.
The tour is a tour. Bloody media, eh?
Bloody media.
It's all their fault. Right, Caley, shall we carry on wandering around the buses, and
we can wander.
We'll catch up. Well, let's wander down. We're wandering down towards Cannondale Garderen. What can we see here?
Well, not a whole lot. Their bikes are out. I was just actually chatting with one of their mechanics about tire pressures, if you want a little bit of tech knowledge.
Yeah.
Alex has been working in pro racing for about 12 years, he said, and we were just talking about tires and tire pressure and how...
There's Matt Rabin, the Cannondale Garderen chiropractor. Matt, this is for the VeloNews podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Are you having a good tour, busy tour?
Been a very busy tour, yeah. Lots of crashes in the first week. Last night was the earliest we got finished, about 10:30. It's been 11:30 every single night otherwise.
You're working hard on your riders?
Yes. Unfortunately, we lost Jack yesterday, 2 days ago.
Jack Bauer, that is.
To a pretty bad crash. And that day, I think only 2 of our riders managed to stay upright. So quite a few crashes, lots of work.
Hey, it's not only the riders that are suffering, Matt. Some of the press pack are suffering with back pains as well. You did your best to fix me on the eve of the tour. I'm sad to report that my back pain is as bad as ever. I hope you're doing a better job on the riders.
Good one. But 3,000 kilometres over over a 3-week period, you're going to do that to your back. As I did tell you, Richard, this is probably not the best time to be doing Your
Did
job.
he having back pain?
I did try and write you a sickie for so you could get off the race.
A TUE?
Well, yeah, something like that. I did try and write you a sickie to get off the race, but you didn't want it.
I love it too much.
Grafter.
Yeah, I'm a grafter.
I'm
a grafter. Cheers, Matt.
All the best.
Caley, let's carry on wandering down the buses. That was Matt Rabin. Do you know he went to school with Bradley Wiggins?
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, there's Tim Harris. Tim, how are you? One of the drivers on the tour. Tim Harris, former British professional road race champion. You can't wander more than a few paces without bumping into someone. This is for the VeloNews podcast. How's your tour?
Well, from our point of view, it's been a good tour. I've been taking guests on each stage, but I mean, it's been a very, very exciting, unbelievably exciting Tour de France. Unfortunately, a lot of the excitement is via crashes, which is obviously not good.
Who's the most interesting guest you've had so far?
We got a lot of interesting guests. There's nobody really famous, but we had a lot of people from all over the world. So no one really in particular, but yeah, a lot of interesting people, to be honest.
How long have you been driving on the tour?
That's now my 9th Tour de France.
Yeah, and you take guests every day. Business people, sponsors.
Competition winners, business people, sponsors, politicians, and things. And they arrive, and we have 30 bicycles with us. So every single morning I do that together with Stephen Roach. We go for a bike ride for an hour and then we follow every stage.
Who's fitter, you or Roach? You're both from the same sort of era. You must be about the same.
Stephen Roach is always the fittest. He's unbelievable. However, even if he's a bit chubby sometimes, he's a legend of fitness. I tell you, he'd probably be able to keep up for half of these stages.
You don't take him in the mountains?
In the mountains, he's Stephen Roach. He's got legs like pistons.
All right, Tim. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks.
Speak to you later. Caley, let's carry on our wander.
There's Tejay. He had a little bit of blood on his knee when he went by me at the finish yesterday, but the team says he's okay, so we're happy about that.
Yeah, he's still stealthily creeping up the overall standings, isn't he? He's still there.
He's so consistent, and I think American fans maybe don't want to jinx it. They don't want to talk about it too much, but
we're speaking before the team time trial. Obviously, there are a few teams being sort of decimated. I want to use the word decimated. I got told off last year for saying decimated because literally it obviously means reduced by 10%. Well, none of the teams have lost 0.9 of their riders, but you know what I mean. Several teams have been obliterated. Orica Green Edge, but there are some teams that are completely intact. And we were talking last night. Don't want to jinx anybody at all, but Team Sky, I don't think any of their riders have had a crash even. Yeah. I don't know about BMC. What's their state of fitness?
They're doing quite well. They've had a couple incidents. Os has some injuries, and they have a couple injuries to the big Soigneur guys, or big domestique guys. But no, they're doing quite well, and TJ's confident going in the team time trial. Speaking of Sky, they are sort of notorious for having crashes actually in the past.
Aaron Thomas especially.
Yeah, they've actually had they switched tires a couple months ago, right before the Giro, and they're on Continental tires. We used to be riding Veloflex, which they used to buy. Apparently the Continentals are quite popular in the peloton on wet days. I know that IAM is also using Contis on rain days. They're using their Schwalbe sponsor tires the rest of the time, but when it rains, they put the Continentals on.
Wow, let's carry on, Caley, because we're not long to the start now. I'll catch up with you and Andy Hood over the next couple of days.
Absolutely. We'll be around. You're listening to the VeloNews Tour de France podcast, supported by Jaguar.
Okay, I've caught up with Caley Fretz at the Parc Beaumont Hotel in Pau. Always a traditional stopping off spot at the Tour de France. Rest days are often held here. This is one of the nicer hotels in Pau. Some of the teams stay here. BMC and Team Sky are here this year, and we've had a long drive, haven't we, Caley, down from Brittany to the gateway to the Pyrenees.
Yeah, 730 kilometers. We stopped in Bordeaux overnight, which is quite a nice town. 4-hour drive and a 2-hour drive. So, yeah, bit of a haul. The riders flew down, lucky them, and they're down here in this very nice hotel. And as is sort of customary in Pau, something has happened. It's usually blood bag related. This time it's some very sad news about Ivan Basso.
Yeah, we've just heard that he gave a press conference this afternoon, and he'd only just heard himself that he's been diagnosed with testicular cancer and has obviously left the race. Really sad news, but I understand, or he has reported that the diagnosis should be good. There's a very high chance of full recovery. His team doctors put it at 98 to 99%. So fingers crossed for Ivan Basso. He leaves the race. I mean, it was apparently, it flared up during the week. He had a problem after one of the stages, swelling in his testicle, went and had it checked out, and as I say, only received the news today. So he's off the tour. I mean, we've seen riders, most famously Lance Armstrong, rode a whole season with testicular cancer. Surprising, I guess, to see Ivan Basso, one of the strongest riders in the team.
These guys they have high pain tolerance, so like you said, Lance rode most of the season with testicular cancer, and Basso had a crash in stage 5 and had a bit of a flare-up, and had probably thought that the pain was just due to that, but did get it checked out by the doctor. Doctor found something worrying, and they went to the hospital in Po this morning and got it checked out, and they found out just about 2 hours before Tinkoff had its press conference today.
He was very composed as he told the press. Contador was very upset beside him. Alberto Contador is team leader. He's a man down now as well, of course, from the race's point of view. He's already quite a bit down overall, and we're speaking the day after the team time trial, which provided the shake-up that we expected. Not major sort of time gains and losses, but Nibali, it's not been a good weekend for Nibali, has it?
No, he is significantly farther behind than he would like to be. I think he was really hoping to use the first week to his advantage. I think he wanted to lead at this point with the cobbles and the stages that really suited him over some of the other favorites. He certainly tried on the cobbles and just couldn't get anywhere. He's in Tejay Van Garderen's press conference this morning, he said the exact same thing. He said, I think Nibali wanted to be ahead at this point, and the fact that he's not will make it very, very difficult for him to catch up. I think Nibali, Quintana, and Contador they're all going to have to be super aggressive over the next 2 weeks. Probably earlier than they would have hoped. Everyone is pointing to last week as the real key, real pivotal week. I think those guys are going to have to start trying to chip away earlier than they would have liked, which could burn all their matches and could make the last week even worse for them.
Well, as you said, Tejay Van Garderen, we're in the BMC Hotel, and Tejay Van Garderen, who is second overall, gave a press conference today. A day or so earlier, our colleague Andy Hood from VeloNews spoke to Tejay Van Garderen and also Jim Ochowicz from the BMC team. So let's hear now from Tejay Van Garderen and Jim Ochowicz.
Tejay, must be happy with this first week.
Yeah, it couldn't have gone much better.
I mean, you got through unscathed, right? Perfect position for GC.
I mean, the boys have been incredible. They've really done all the work for me. I've just had to follow the wheel, and they made my life a lot less stressful. So now we just got to smash the TTT tomorrow and rest up and look forward to the part where I have to kind of do it on my own.
No surprises today. I mean, Nibali lost a little bit of time. Did you see what happened to him? Did he just get shot out the back, or did he have some sort of... he looked like in good position. He was right there with me. It looked like he just kind of struggled on this climb, which was a surprise. Usually finishes like this are pretty good for Nibali, but it could have just been an off day, but 6 seconds is 6 seconds. Yeah, I mean, for you, no problem. Well, you stayed right next to Froome on the way up there today, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of hectic and just a lot of bump and elbows. But yeah, just tried to stay calm and make sure to not lose any positions.
13 seconds from that yellow thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. That'd really be something if we could take it. But right now we're focusing on getting the stage win. And if the yellow jersey comes with that, awesome. If not, we just want the victory.
Who's the main powers, main motors for tomorrow?
Movistar usually goes really good. Sky. Astana is going to be good. I think those are the main ones. I might be forgetting one. I think Green Edge is kind of hurting a little bit. They're usually strong, but Quick Step obviously. But they're missing Tony. I don't know. I mean, a lot of teams on paper are really good, but when you get to day 9, it's always a question mark how strong they're going to be. But if I were to pick the favorite, I'd say BMC.
Yeah, and within your team, who are you counting on really to drive this team time trial tomorrow?
The 4 world champions that we have here in the discipline, and mainly Rohan Dennis.
Yeah,
he's definitely the key factor of the team.
And he's fresh, you're fresh. Everyone's excited about tomorrow.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
What do you guys do as a team to try to protect Tejay? What's the team strategy in a stage like today?
You saw it. You have to stay on the front all day. You don't have a lot of choices. You can see that the four of the bigger teams are able to do that because they've got the riders that can hang there. It's not easy to stay in the wind, and it was a pretty stiff headwind for most of the day.
Yeah.
So look, you do what you do to protect the leader, but you got to be. The only way to do it is to be in the front, and it's not easy to do.
What do you do when the road's this wide? You got 6 teams trying to be in the front.
That's a real fight. You try to be one of the first 2 into the turns. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a fight.
I just heard Mickey Shark saying as well that it was just brutal out there today. They're just nervous, just physical fighting almost through the whole stage. I think for these guys, it's probably harder than a mountain stage almost a lot of times.
But I think that they'll be happy when they hit the mountains when this first 10 days is over, or at least for a few days, because it does relieve the tension a bit because, the climbs really separate people pretty quick. So you're not dealing with that huge number of riders, in the same group.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much easier.
There's nothing really. I mean, it's like that every year at the Tour. It's just a casino in a lot of ways.
Look, they've got to reduce the size of this peloton, and the only way they can do that is they have to eliminate the number of teams that take the start in World Tour races. The World Tour teams there's regulation for them to be qualified to be in this race. There's no regulation that applies to pro continental teams. It's simply a wild card selection, and there's too many of them in the race, and they're not qualified to be here.
Qualified in what sense?
They don't have the infrastructure to prepare. They don't have the athletes that are prepared well enough for this race, and we can't have that many riders in the peloton.
What's a good number for you? Do you think
20 in the Grand Tours, 22 in the one day races.
9-man teams.
9-man teams, 8-man teams. Yeah,
because you can't. I heard you said that you can't do a Grand
Tour.
Tour.
All this for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You got some teams already that are look at Green Edge, poor guys.
Yeah.
They're on their knees right now, right?
Yeah.
They may not even have 5-6 riders for the team time trial on Sunday.
Yeah.
So if you start with less, my goodness, I've seen the Tour people finish with 2-3 races, 2-3 riders in the past, and it happens. But
so the idea to reduce the number of riders on a team is not something you agree with? Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, reduce the number of days, and you can reduce the number of riders.
Yeah. So that for you, it's an issue. I know that you brought it up after some crashes involving Stedna.
I've been saying it all spring.
Yeah.
Since all this stuff started again, and I said it to the Giro, and I've said it whenever I can, because there needs to be a qualifying system for being in this race, just like there's a qualifying system to be in the Super Bowl or in the Masters or in any other high-profile sporting event. There's a way to get there.
Yeah.
So tell me the way, and I'll explain it to me.
Yeah.
I know the way for us.
Well, some argue that some World Tour teams aren't as good as even some pro continental teams.
I'm not going to argue who should be in the race or who shouldn't be in the race. I know that we have to go through a licensing process with the regulations that explain why we're qualified to be here. I think there isn't that for the others.
Yeah. So it's a inconsistency there that you'd like to see.
I'd like to understand what's the process for selection.
Well, it seems like whoever ASO wants to invite is the process.
Well, it's not just ASO. There is no regulation. It's not the UCI. It's not the ASO's problem. There's no regulation for them to follow.
Yeah. So the idea of a wild card, you don't think should really be?
I think wild cards can be in this race, but a smaller number.
Yeah. So do you see that reflected in just more crashes, you think?
I think it's one of the things, along with the roads. The transportation departments in all these little communities, they do work on roads, right? And when they do new work on roads, they put stuff out there to slow traffic down.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And we don't build the roads; the local communities do, and they build roads to slow traffic down. And when they put stuff in the roads that slows, it's hard for the riders to deal with it.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't there 10 years ago.
Yeah.
May not have even been there last year.
Exactly. But the overall just to comment real quickly on Tejay, got through today, no problem.
No, he was okay. Yeah.
I mean, he's
10 stay, but he got through. It seems like most everybody got through.
Because how hard are the finishes at the Mer de Bretagne? I mean, Tejay should be really good.
You mean on Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not even thinking about that
No,
yet.
you can't think that far in advance. We got to get through tomorrow because the team time trial.
We know.
We don't want to think that too far in
No,
advance.
we're not.
One day at a time, one day at a time.
So we heard there from Tejay van Garderen, leader of the BMC team, and Jim Ochowicz. Now, Van Garderen, is he a bit annoyed that all this chatter about the Big Four, Fab Four, is he making a play for Fab Five?
He is making a play for Fab Five. He wasn't annoyed. I think he, before the race, he made a pretty valid point, which is that all those other guys have won much bigger races than he has. They've all won, Grand Tours, and he never has. He's never even been on the podium, so he didn't really belong in that group. And he really wanted to. He wanted that to change after this tour. He wanted to be part of that group after this tour, and I think after the first week, second overall, very, very consistent. I think he's definitely done that. He made a joke about the Backstreet Boys having 5, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't have the Fab 5 instead of the Fab 4 at the press conference today. So he's pretty lighthearted about it, and I don't think it's not eating him up inside that he's not included in that group. But he's a determined guy. I think he wants to be there by the end of this race.
Surely allowed him to fly under the radar a little bit, and he's just stealthily crept up to be right on Froome's shoulder. He's in a very strong team. Froome falters, which at the moment doesn't look likely. He looks very strong, Froome, but if he falters, Van Garderen's in pole position.
He is, yeah. His team was perfect for the first week. He's got a whole bunch of big rouleur type guys to protect him. It's very much the same tactic that Cadel Evans used in 2011, to sort of get through the first week quite well and then hang on. And Tejay said today that his whole idea is to try to limit losses over the next week, hopefully to 0, and then hope that those guys that we were talking about earlier, the Contador, Quintana, hope that those guys have to burn some matches in the Pyrenees so that they don't have any left in the Alps, and he's really looking to that last week. If we can get to the Pyrenees without any real losses, then he's really looking forward to the Alps.
Funny you mentioned Cadel Evans, same team, won the Tour in 2011. Not the same kind of rider, but not dissimilar either. A diesel engine, and not somebody who's going to take off in the mountains and attack with great panache. He's not going to do that. He's going to grind it out. He's going to watch these guys attack. He's just going to carry on riding at his own pace, isn't he? The difference maybe being that in 2011, Cadel Evans was up against Andy Schleck and a fatigued Alberto Contador, which might be the Alberto Contador we've got this year as well on the evidence so far. But Froome and Quintana, you suspect, are more of a handful than Andy Schleck was in 2011 and Tommy Voeckler.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think overcoming Froome in particular at this point is going to be very, very difficult for Tejay. Froome's just looking so good, and he's so consistent, and really I think Froome used to be that same sort of grinded out kind of rider, and has become more explosive in the last couple of years. And so he's never going to get rid of him up the climbs, and there's no time trial to try to take any time out of him. Not that he probably would anyway. It's going to be very difficult to overcome a Froome that doesn't have an issue. Contador and Quintana, Tejay's style of climbing, style of riding, could absolutely take time out of them. And if those guys attack too early, too often, then his very consistent style will pay off. It's not the most exciting to watch on television, but it's also very effective. So,
yeah, I mean, the other day we were driving in our quite nice Jaguar, Caley. We were driving along, going pretty fast, and we were traveling with a friend of ours in a camper van. Much slower vehicle, and we set off at the same time. He was behind us for a while, but we soon lost him. However, we arrived at our destination at pretty much the same time. There could be a metaphor there for Tejay van Garderen. He's the camper van, isn't he? Quintana and Froome are the sleek sort of sports car.
Little Jags. Yeah. No, I think that's an apt analogy. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Chris Froome also gave a press conference this morning, and he admitted there something he said a couple of weeks ago when I spoke to him that, and he didn't say this at the time, but he felt in 2013 in the final week he was really hanging on those final few days, and over the last couple of days in 2013 when he won, Quintana, who seemed to be getting stronger and stronger as the race went on, did take time out of him on the stage Alpe d'Huez and Semnoz the next day, the big climb above Annecy on the penultimate day of the Tour. And it was obvious that Froome wasn't as fresh, as strong there as he had been in the Pyrenees and on Mont Ventoux. He was flagging a bit. Quite interesting to hear him actually finally admit that. He was admitting it because he doesn't think the same will happen this year. He feels like he's gonna get stronger, but then he would say that, wouldn't he?
Well, to say anything else would be certainly interesting. Open the door to some rivals to wait until his last couple days. He hasn't had to do a lot yet, honestly. And I think this week he doesn't really have to do a lot. So, if he can just maintain, he's already got his gap, particularly against the guys that are real threats in those last couple stages, the guys that are quite punchy and can maybe take some time up those final climbs. If he can just maintain over this first week, he's going to come into that last week fresher than he did in 2013, where he really put it all on the line early. I could be totally wrong. He could put it all on the line early again. Tomorrow,
he can be quite an impulsive rider. I mean, I remember on Alpe d'Huez and on Semnoz he attacked when he was in the yellow jersey. He should have ridden defensively. He didn't. He is an aggressive rider, and sometimes that he can be his own worst enemy. I don't know if he's matured as a rider since then. He possibly has, but just because Chris Froome attacks doesn't mean that he's necessarily got an awful lot left in the tank. I think Quintana is a big danger. He is a bit adrift at the moment, but in the context of the stages to come, it's not a big deal. The more interesting thing is that he didn't lose any time in the cobbles. He didn't lose much time in the team time trial. And I asked Alex Dowsett, a member of the Movistar team who was well below par in the team time trial, how Quintana had been, and he said he was really strong. And on a course like that with some of the big engines that Movistar have, that speaks a lot for Quintana's form and condition, I think.
Yeah, I think he's the biggest threat. Froome singled out Van Garderen as the biggest threat, but I think that's incorrect. I think that Tejay is a real shot at the podium, but just does not have the punch to get past Froome. Even that 12 seconds, he's just never going to get 12 seconds on the guy. Quintana, on the other hand, does have the punch, and this is a very, very, very difficult Tour de France.
It's interesting you say that. Does he have the punch? I mean, it's funny, we look at him and he's a small, diminutive little Colombian climber. But is he a punchy climber? Is he? Can you? I mean, Semnoz he attacked, he won, but it was more of a war of attrition. He's a funny rider in that sense, isn't he? He's a decent time trialist. He's not necessarily what we expect from a Colombian climber.
He's not quite your, he's not Purito, he's not Valverde, I don't think.
No.
But I think he's still. Well, he's still punchier than Tejay,
yeah.
and maybe has a little bit more punch than Froome. I mean, we've seen him go on the attack before. It was Ventoux a couple years ago. He was caught and passed, so it was maybe an ill-fated effort, but he still made the effort and he still got a gap. We've seen him get gaps before, and if he's riding well and can hang on to him, I don't think there's any reason to think that he can't take a little bit of time. I mean, Contador is kind of the same way. There's a question mark over his head right now because the Contador of old, we could say, could absolutely take time at the end of every single stage, just pop off in the last couple hundred meters and take a couple seconds. But the new Contador version 2.0 is quite a bit tamer, less able to spin it up like he used to be able to. So yeah, I think those two guys have real question marks over top of them, and we just don't know how they're going to ride when it gets steep. We do generally know how Froome is going to ride when it gets steep. We know definitely how Tejay is going to ride when it gets steep, but Quintana, Contador, we don't really know. And same with Nibali. Nibali is even in just this one Tour de France has had a couple ups and a couple downs already. So I think we'll see the same thing over the next couple of weeks, where he's going to have real good days and maybe some real bad days.
Right, well, let's find out, Caley, what's going to happen. We'll be back with your colleague Andy Hood, who's disappeared for the day. We're close to Spain. He's always a bit frisky around here, isn't he, around this neck of the woods? So we'll find him, we'll locate him somewhere in the Pyrenees, and we'll rejoin you for another VeloNews podcast supported by Jaguar next week. For the moment, thank you very much, Caley.
Thank you.